Well, good morning, everybody. Great seeing all the faces. Thank you for. Yes, good morning. You're welcome to greet each other. I know we're
Morning,
still admitting
everybody.
lots of people.
Morning.
Morning to all.
Great hearing all the voices, seeing all the faces. We're still admitting lots of people into the meeting. And we've been looking forward to this great ARIA event for some time. Great agenda they've put together, Sarah and the team, and privileged being involved here. Let me so long share my screen. I can just get my thing set up quickly here. So while we're still admitting more people into the meeting, let's quickly do some housekeeping. Remember, guys, please keep yourselves on mute. Otherwise, we've got too much background noises and stuff. And then you can obviously use the chat room, to greet each other and share contact details and so on. So it's great having you on board. You can see we're doing today an event hosted by ARIA. It's an ARIA event, and we're looking at third-party access, a historical event, today the 31st of March 2022. And you can see quite impressive topics. The MECs, unfortunately, the minister couldn't make it anymore, but we privilege in having the MEC with us today to talk to us, and he will talk. We're going to move him on a little bit later in the meeting, as soon as he's available. So we're going to have Mike Schuessler this morning after the chairman's report. Mike Schuessler will talk about third-party access, the independent economist view, and then we will see how we go along. The DTG of Rail, Mwaku Makepa, that's the future of railways in South Africa, national rail policy. Most of that time we'll have the MEC, and then we will continue with the second half of the program, talking further about the important topic, third-party access, liability, and insurance. Mr. Simon Dugel, WAPTEC, OEM readiness to respond to third-party access, very important. Therefore, Makaila, and then our chairperson will then close the meeting for us later on today. So, without further ado, then I would like to hand you over to our chairperson, Mr. James Hawley. He's the chairperson of African Rail Industry Association. He will do the official welcome on behalf of ARIA and also do his chairman's report. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you very much, Harry. Good morning to our distinguished guests, ARIA members, members of the media, industry participants, and interested stakeholders. I'd like to start by recapping what has happened so far this year in rail in South Africa. On the 10th of February, during the State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa said this: Transnet will start the process of providing third-party access to its freight rail network from April 2022 by making slots available on the container corridor between Durban and City Deep in Gauteng. Shortly thereafter, Transnet announced that they would, in what was called Phase 1 of third-party access, open up 6 slots on the container corridor and 10 slots on the Cape corridors between Johannesburg and East London and Nelson Mandela Bay. Last week, the draft white paper International Rail Policy was adopted by Parliament. Furthermore, last week, the Luxembourg Rail Protocol to the Cape Town Convention on International Interests in Mobile Equipment was signed by the Honourable Minister of Transport, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. Goodness me, that is progress. Perhaps the most important development was the adoption of the draft white paper, International Rail Policy. ARIA advocated for this adoption, and Operation Vulindlela made its adoption one of their priority projects because it creates policy certainty for our industry and creates a vital baseline for the rollout of structural reform. While we have not yet seen the final version of the policy, which is in the process of being gazetted, the last version that was released for public comment was encouraging in terms of two critical reforms for freight and commuter rail. In terms of third-party access to the freight networks, the following is important to note. The creation of an interim regulator to oversee the implementation of the first phases of reform and mediate disputes has been proposed. This will be replaced by the Transport Economic Regulator on its formation. The vertical separation of Transnet into infrastructure owner, infrastructure manager, and train operator is in line with international best practice. It sets out equal rights of private operators and of Transnet. It sets out that branch line concessionaires should have complete mainline access for the freight that they source. It talks about network-wide access and not just limited access. It talks about the obligation of the infrastructure manager to grant access rights if the conditions for acceptance are in place. And finally, the fact that there should be implications for non-utilization of slots by operators and for the non-provision of slots by network operators is vitally important. So while this is a short summary of the policy, it goes a long way in providing the certainty that operators that are looking to make billions of rands of investment into new train sets need. And this should be celebrated. In terms of rail reform proposed for the passenger rail sector, the following is important to note. It is proposed that prices devolved into being the responsibility of the respective metros or municipalities. This is important, as voters will be able to hold local government responsible for commuter rail services. It also enables the same municipalities to take full ownership of the integration of their transport strategy. This should be celebrated. On standard gauge, while ambition is important, the cost and impact on investment in Cape gauge rolling stock or trains needs to be carefully managed. Private operators will be investing in Cape gauge train sets for the long term. Uncertainty on the timing of conversion of standard gauge will create uncertainty and could undermine investment by the private sector. As an industry, we should not be distracted away from what is most important now, which is to catch up the maintenance backlogs on the core Cape gauge network. On the Luxembourg Rail Protocol, ARIA advocated for the signature of the protocol as it will lower costs of financing materially, and when adopted regionally, enhance regional trade. It also creates an alignment of South African laws with international norms, which will assist with the sourcing of international funders for the local market. We congratulate government for signing the protocol and will continue to assist where we can with the ratification process. To the team at Operation Vulindlela, congratulations on the progress you have made. You will soon have achieved 3 of your 4 priority rail projects. Again, this needs to be celebrated. But please, don't stop now. This progress will mean nothing if the reforms are not implemented effectively. Our industry is starting to believe in the government's reform agenda. International locomotive OEMs are preparing. Wagon manufacturers are innovating. Investors are interested. But it is important to remember that first and foremost, it is not about us in the rail industry. It's about the economy. Every job we create in rail the economy creates 100. For every tax rand we pay, the upstream economy pays 50. We are an enabler of the economy. In rail, we are not the economy itself. We will only truly succeed when the services we bring the confidence the economy needs to invest. With investment comes growth. With growth comes jobs. With jobs, South Africa thrives. It is the exponential benefit that the rail industry brings that makes our industry so meaningful. The time of implementation of reform will be an uncertain one. All we can do in ARIA is say that we are there to support our members and our industry. We encourage conversation, we encourage debate, but fundamentally, we have to say that we are encouraged by where we are going. In closing, I have to thank Marcella Nhlapho and her team for all they have done and all they do for our members and the government as it implements rail reform. Our membership has more than doubled, and there can be no greater recognition than this. Harry, thank you.
Thank you so much, James. Really appreciate the hard work you guys are doing and opening the session for us. Thank you for what ARIA is doing for the industry. And we believe that there's many, many good years to come, and South Africa's economy will definitely be uplifted by ARIA. Thank you so much, James. We really appreciate that. Ladies and gents, yes, so our first presenter for this morning then is Mr. Mike Schuessler. He's the Chief Economist of Economist.coza. He's going to talk about third-party access, the independent economist view. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, Harry. Can you just stop sharing your screen so I can share mine? Okay, I'm busy sharing. Okay, I'm going to do a very quick overview of transport and even quicker on the world economy. I'm a bit disappointed with my data provider, to be honest, or not just them. The actual mess that the world is in now, vis-a-vis the war in Ukraine, the COVID situation in Shanghai, China, the untangling of the supply chain is great news, but it looks like it could get tangled again vis-a-vis the COVID episodes now in China. It's the biggest they've had. And only if you look at these two, only the Economist Intelligence Unit has lowered their growth so far to 3.6 from 4.2. I don't see the world economy growing anywhere close to 4%. Even the 3.6 is a bit optimistic now. We all know there's going to be a big shock in prices. We're going to feel that on many areas. I do a lot of work for the road freight industry, and you can just see with the diesel prices going up with another 3 rand, roughly speaking. That's going to hurt. We're already seeing a lot of firms bleeding, not just in South Africa, around the world. We see food prices. I'm not doing inflation here, but if food prices are really rising, the world inflation is at its highest rate in about 13, 14 years. For the first time in 18 years, South Africa has a lower inflation rate than the rest of the world, which is helping our rand a bit. But overall, you know, there's a supply side shock. Everything from fertilizer, I mean, some fertilizer prices are up more than 600%. That's going to impact right across the food chain. It's going to impact right across the commodities chain. So there's a lot of other things that are happening. The electricity prices, oil prices are going to have a big impact on services. So I'd be a bit worried about growth this year from that. However, my main thing, and that's where I want to go to, is I do the C-Track Freight and Transport Index. We track essentially 6 sectors in the freight arena, and road is about 48%, and it's going to become more. What we also try to track here is not just the Stats SA third-party people, but also use a few indicators like Tugela and other places where we can measure transport by road for the people that do their own transport. And road is up nearly 17%. I'll show you just how it looks over the longer term. Air freight was hit very, very hard during the pandemic, but it's making a good comeback. Those are the 2 lead sectors. The other thing with road, I think we just have to acknowledge there's a part of it that we're going to learn how to measure soon. We're not measuring it yet 100%, but it's that home delivery part. It's really taken off. I had a big call the other day to the HR manager of the ShopRite Checkers Group. In one go, they employed 4,000 people basically on motorbikes and running around stores. And since then, it's only increased. Now you got Pick and Pay doing the same. Woolies has got Dash. We've had Take a Lot and Superbalist and all these things. So that's coming. What we're seeing on the storage and handling side, I'll talk about a bit later, but sea freight at the moment is a bit of a mystery. We've only got the TEU properly counted. With the Transnet's National Port Authority moving down to Kucha, a lot of their figures are all of a sudden not updated. But rail is also a bit negative here, which is a worry, but I'll tell you why just now. So if we look at the whole freight index, you can see the COVID, you can see the previous Great Recession in 2008-9 here. But generally speaking, in the last while, we've done very, very well. And the logistics sector as such has come back. The freight sector has done very well, led by road, then air freight, I would say sea freight as well a bit. You can see how it's grown over the last year. Obviously, there was quite a bounce back. And now this is quite a strong growth at 7%. I'm very optimistic that something is going on in our transport sector, and that will carry through to the economy in the first quarter. We see it in other things, car sales and the like too, the PMI. Air and sea freight is a little bit under pressure. Yeah, I think we're at the bottom end of that whole supply chain debacle, but it's cleared itself up in Los Angeles, in New York, and it's probably clearing up on the route to us too. Air freight, it's a strange thing. I like it. I think it suits the new economy, these small parcels, people ordering from Amazon or wherever. Things like cell phones are all air freight. Cell phones must be our biggest import on the consumer side now, most valuable one. Obviously, oil, I think, as such, is the biggest commodity, but and that doesn't go air freight. But everything that we see now, more and more stuff is going air freight, and I think that'll continue. I'm a bit concerned about the storage. Pipelines is very small. It's less than 2% overall. And it seems to be a bit counter-cyclical or a bit of a delayed factor there. But the storage for me is a different story, and I think we need to, at one stage, investigate that a lot more. But the point is, I think people don't like putting so much stuff in storage anymore. They'd rather be just in time on the storage and on the manufacturing and on everything. And I think in time we'll get a better handle there. Here's a big thing for ARIA members. You can see road freight in the last few years has really taken rail off. I mean, rail peaked around 2016. Was its peak. You can see that here. I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but over there. And road is just picking up. There's parts of road that should be on rail, I've no doubt, and it should be going there, especially the bulk stuff. Things traveling without interruption for over 350 kilometers is the other thing. But the problem is the intercity or the inter-town part, at least, of rail is no longer functioning. There's only a few railway lines that are functioning, and you're going to have to lower those expectations a little bit. It's a great thing that you guys are coming on board, but there needs to be infrastructure investment, not just in the rolling stock. But I mean, if you go to Twitter accounts now of Transnet Freight Rail, every week you can see how many cables are stolen and how much rail track is stolen and goodness knows what else. It's a huge problem. So we need to do something there, and we need to find a way, because this cannot be allowed to continue. I'll show you the tonnage just now. Here's what I'm talking about, the new economy type of thing. I don't know why they have vehicles and transport equipment separate, but the electronic stuff, I think, would be things like cell phones and stuff. That's, and textiles, very small. It's less than 2% of the land transport, but it's up 25%. It's up quicker on the transport side than it is on the retail side, which is strange. Other freight is anything in that basket, and it's about the fourth biggest category. So it grew 22%. I think that's also the home deliveries. Paper and pulp is very small. Containers is about the third biggest. That's also growing quite quickly, because some vehicles and parts is growing quickly. You can see when we get down to the bulk stuff, the primary mining, the non-metallic and basic, and the non-metallic products and the basic and fabricated metals are not growing. And is that due to the demand? I don't think so, and I'll tell you why just now when we get there. And you can see in other countries, yes, India might and Mexico might be a bit high due to that being towards the end of last year after the COVID year. But you can see, generally speaking, you're looking at single-digit growth in the railways around the world. South Africa, Canada, and Turkey seeing declines. I think there's room for growth in all of rail in South Africa. We should be able to have a very good bounce here. The commodities I've got here, this is the coal exports. Now, the coal miners will tell you they can export. Coal prices were at record highs. Let me tell you how high they were. They were at stages, they were over 3,000 Rand a ton, the highest we've ever seen. We've lost between 31 billion and 39 billion Rand because of the non-export of coal last year and the last few months, like 8 months of last year. The first 2-3 months of this year, I haven't got the data yet, but you can add that. You can add probably another 1.5 million for manganese that hasn't been exported. Probably a similar amount for iron ore. It's not that much on the iron ore side. The chrome is all by road, which doesn't make sense. Goes through Maputo mainly. Let me not say anything there. I think what we need to do is we need to think to ourselves why this is happening. South Africa lost anywhere between, I would say, for all 4 of those ores, and I'm not even including agriculture and other stuff. Obviously, I don't include gold and platinum. That goes a very different route. It's not suitable to rail. But just on these 4, we lost between, I think in total, 39 billion billion rand in export earnings last year. To put that into context, it's about 1% of GDP, but for the whole mining sector, it would have added about 12.5% to the whole mining sector. So as a primary sector, that money goes right through the economy. It's paid to, first of all, workers, and then they obviously upgrade the mines, and then goes to the security company there, goes to the shareholders, goes everywhere. And it goes to government in form of taxes, royalties, everything. So that is an important sector to our economy. This should have been making us money, and now as well, the whole thing with Europe and Russia on the war, just to make it that Europe will buy coal, Germany will buy coal, Poland will buy coal right now from us. They're firing up their coal-fired power stations, despite what the environmentalists say. They need it, they need to carry on, and we can't deliver. We can't deliver to India, we can't deliver to China, and that's because we don't have rail. So we need our rail, we need it desperately. And that's just one sector. It's obviously the main sector here between where the linkage with rail is, I think, but there are others, as I've mentioned. I'm not even going to get to containers. I'll get a little bit there. The road transport, again, part of this is because of COVID things. The Denmark thing is, there's a bridge between Denmark and Sweden now. It's really changing their stuff, but we've done very well here. But everywhere in the world, we're seeing more and more growth in road, but not where you, not just trucks. We're seeing it in that door-to-door delivery, the little motorbike, the van, the bucky, and so on, delivering to people or to small businesses. I sit in a small business park here, and every day this bell rings 5, 6, 7 times as deliveries are made every day. So that, can be complementary to rail, but just shows you here the increase in trucks. Look at that green line. At stages, the trucks are more than the cars at Tugela. We reached last year at a peak 7,600 trucks per day on the N3 highway in Tugela. We're not talking Moirafi, where you've still got extra lanes and everything. We're talking in the middle of that, in the long distance, where rail can compete. 7,600. It's not going to be that every month, that is for certain, but it is incredible growth. It is really going wild, and that includes then the people that transport their own stuff, because I think that's what we're finding difficult to measure. So there you get that part for yourselves to think about. This is a chart I kept updated. I did a lot of work for Transnet. These numbers aren't meant to be 100%, but they are pretty close. So if you take away the bulk commodities from rail, I take away iron ore, coal, everything on the main exports, bulk exports, where rail goes down to the harbor, because that's where everybody wants to be. It's the easiest part of rail. But the harder part of rail, where we should be making insights into as well, and it's not going to be that easy, because there's contracts in place. People have got systems in place for now, but we've gone from about a quarter of all other things going, or above a quarter going on road, to only 7.5%. So 1 hour every sort of 12 things now goes by rail, other than the commodities. And that's a scary thought. I think, I'm not saying you go back to a quarter, but if you can just get it back to double this, there's a huge amount that can be done. And to show it in tons, the export commodities still picked up. If it wasn't for that, that's the yellow line here, we wouldn't have Transnet Rail at the moment. We would have a very sorry state of affairs, because that's gone from about 60 million metric tons a year to roughly 140 metric tons a year. And but the non-commodity part of it, it's gone from 120 to roughly, say, 45 million. And that's the problem. Here and there'll be upticks because you have imports from during droughts when it's more likely to go onto rail. But it's interesting how this is working. And it says to me, not all of this will come back, but it says to me that there's a lot of fruit hanging there to be picked. Not all of this, but if you take it from 45 to say 80, 90 on the sort of container general goods side, that's where I think it can go quite easily. And when I say easily, I don't mean within a year. I mean, make that clear. I mean, let's make that rather in 5 years. My last slide, and then I'm finished. And ask questions if there is, because I've got somewhere else to go. It will not be a fast road back. I'm very lucky to have a long association with Harry, and I've sat in on many of the transport forums things. I've seen what Transnet has said, what happens to them. I've been in meetings with the Department of Transport, where I've seen the mess that the department finds itself in. I find myself in a thing and I say, I wish you all luck. I hope you can all make it. But there's an infrastructure side to this that needs to be thought through. And then there's the systems. And with systems, if I go to a transporter today, they let their client know where the truck is, what the temperature of the fruit is, what the expected time of arrival is in Europe or here or whatever. So there's a lot of systems in place. And on the back of that, that company and another transporter, maybe say the local transporter, who just delivers to people's houses, is making plans and where they come into and so on. So I think you have to get those systems in place. You have to also realize that once the rules change, it's very much like the electricity sector, the rules changed. Don't want to dishearten you, I think this will be better, but not all the independent power producers are very happy at the moment, as you are well aware, you can read anywhere. And then we've got this whole thing with these truckers, specifically the coal truckers, specifically also some others. They're giving the other truckers hell because they say, no, they don't want the foreigners and the workers going elsewhere. And they get involved because they don't want this company doing it. They want someone else to do it. They want themselves to do it. So I think there's those sort of fights that are also going to come into this industry at some stage. Specifically, I think, in the Eastern Highveld and in KwaZulu-Natal, my feeling. The other thing is you're going to have to really think long and hard. Part of this technology is very simple. Part of it is delivering the goods. That's the first and most important part to you. But the other things on top of that, to put the technology in place where you yourself can unload something into a warehouse at a railway siding, and from there have an agreement or have it done it yourself to home deliver or to deliver to the shop front or whatever, I think might be a technology or a way of thinking that might need to be thought of a lot more. I really wish you well. I think it is going to be an interesting time period. I agree with James. It's come faster all of a sudden than one would have hoped for. It's strange, you know, you can wait for something and you virtually lose all hope, and then all of a sudden things happen. So if things get delayed again, don't be discouraged. Carry on. You guys have done a great job. There's a lot of money, I think, to be made here, a lot of stuff to be transported. No doubt about that. I think the big numbers tell you there's a lot of you guys could make it. Just be aware that the economy is changing. In the transport field, at least, I think this last hurdle to the home is going to be an interesting one. So yeah, that's me done. I wish you all well, and you're welcome to ask questions. Oh, and on the passenger side, even the buses have taken a dive, but who's not come back, and the buses have problems with the taxis as well. But certainly PRASA is a mess. I don't even know how we're going to solve that, but we need to find the private sector there in the forefront as well. I think there's money to be made. I think there's services to be delivered, and it is the cheapest form of transport for the poor. There are government subsidies in place, which is going to make it tough because people are going to come and have all sorts of arguments with you. But anyway, that's my basic story. I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike, for those wise words. We definitely in need of that, especially with the economy changing. And hopefully we can hear still a lot from you in future. Thank you. We know that you've been through surgery and so on to be prepared again and back in your chair. We're very proud and glad to see you. I see Charles Day's got his hands up. Charles, we can take this one question. We're running actually out of time. Charles, can you make it short and you can ask your question, please?
But I'll be quick as I can. First of all, just to remind me, Mike, you mentioned 4 minerals that we've lost between 39 and 50 billion in export earnings on. There were coal, iron ore, manganese, and what was the fourth one? And my coal.
Coal, manganese,
yeah,
iron ore, and chrome.
Chrome, thank you. My real question is, we're aware that the rail infrastructure is in rather poor state, but my concern is the competence of the people who actually operate that infrastructure. Is this, in your opinion, a contributing factor to the lack of service, or is it not such a major factor? The lack of competence of the people involved in the operation?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think there is a problem with competence, but I think the bigger competence thing is that we must get the police must start arresting people and taking them to court and making examples, particularly the people that buy the scrap metals and so on, but also the minions. If there's an economic benefit to them and they don't get caught and nothing happens, then you're going to see this. I mean, you can see PRASA railway stations have virtually been carried away. We cannot allow that to happen to much more of our rail infrastructure at all. And I feel sorry for Transnet because Transnet isn't made, is not geared to look after these lines for kilometers on end. I know the same is happening with pipelines where they're stealing fuel. I have a friend who's got a contract who has to clean up afterwards and everything like that. And, you know, once you do that and you've got people like that involved, that's their competency. But he says the police competency on some of this stuff is really not there either. So if I was the rail guys, I would say, get together with Transnet, tell the government we need proper policing. We need the police to make examples of the people that are destroying our country, because it's nothing less than destruction. If you ask me, it's terrorism of our country, and somebody must pay for it. I don't think I would expect Transnet should have ways to pick up, like the pipelines have, Transnet pipelines. They know where the thing is, and they're within half an hour or so to stop most of the leak. But the point is, these guys that are doing this, they're just not going to jail. They need to go to jail. It needs to be big news. It needs to be put out there. This is a good 20 years for some of them. I'd like to see that happen. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mike and Charles. Really
Thanks, Mike.
appreciate it. I don't know, Alistair's got your hand up. Alistair, if you can keep it very short, then you can ask a question, unmute yourself.
Here it comes. Mike, you mentioned a truck count at Tugela of 7,000. Is that each way or both ways?
It's both ways, 7,600 for, I think it was in September that we reached that peak.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it. Mike, all the best with your next meeting. And we look forward to seeing you with ARIA again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry.
Right, ladies and gents, that was a great presentation. We have our next presenter, the Deputy Director General of Rail, National Department of Transport, Mr. Mwaku Makiepa. He's going to talk about the future of railways in South Africa and national rail policy. Thank you very much, Mr. Makiepa.
Thank you very much, Chair Harry, and for giving us an opportunity. Firstly, let me start by greeting the ARIA Chairperson, Harry, the ARIA Chairperson, James, and all the ARIA members in the meeting. And we really appreciate James and ARIA's collaboration with government and the good work that we are doing. He has already mentioned the kind of progress that we have made on a number of regulatory issues. And secondly, to greet the MEC, if he has already joined, if not, in absentia, and all colleagues from all spheres of government, both national, provincial, and the municipalities, members of the media, rail industry members. We always say all protocol observed. Good morning, and we really thanks very much for ARIA to inviting us to be this kind of discussion. Chair, to move to the next slide of the presentation, I thought before I get to the future of railways in terms of the policy proposals that we have put forward, it will be very critical that I just describe the journey that we have gone through as government and as a sector. There is various claims. Some says the railways have operated in South Africa. Some says 100 years, some says 120 years without a comprehensive rail policy for the country. We can confirm as the Department of Transport that this journey has been long, Chair. It has been a journey of 12 years for us to get to this far. It has been long, but from where we come from, it has been a purposeful journey, because today we can proudly say as a country, we have an overarching national rail policy for the country. Like Mike has said, it has been long and we must not lose hope. We have seen the developments. We know the policy might be a contested issue, that it might not satisfy all of us in terms of the issues that we have put in there. But being the one of its kind and the first, we believe that provide us with a basis for us to be able to do more work moving forward. With regard to the policy itself, it started around 2009 through a discussion document, and as government, we did have a scientific analysis of the railway sector, and secondly, a legal analysis of the regulatory framework that governs us. And lastly, we had to then look at the rail trends internationally to really look in terms of some of these issues that are critical and really looking at the consideration why as a country were we able to miss some commodity boom as opposed to the other countries. And I think Mike in his summary, he is able to really justify some of those particular elements. And that took us to a national rail policy, a green paper, which was approved by cabinet in 2015, which provided the basis for consultation and how we needed to take our railways forward. And that really clarified a government vision for rail policy. And we then have a dialogue. And I think most of the colleagues on the call in the railway sector, they're part of that discussion moving forward. And finally, that led us to development of a national rail policy white paper, which is a 2017, that led us towards stakeholder engagement that we then engage together with the industry, and we had stakeholder consultation across all 9 provinces. And that led us to the development of a national rail white paper, which was approved by cabinet on the 23rd of March 2022, which provide a really an overarching rail policy for the country. And we therefore says this rail policy that we have put on the table describes a conceptual framework for government of a multi-generational mission of railways. And we are saying that because we have seen it with regard to rail reforms that has happened in the country and various international jurisdiction, that it takes certain different formats in terms of them arriving at a vision that they want to achieve. We know our challenges, and we have clearly articulated them, one, during the green paper process, and secondly, even at the white paper process. And I don't want to really get to that. I'm looking forward towards the future, looking at the base of, and we know they cut across various elements in terms of performance challenges and institutional challenges. And I think key is towards the market share and the spaces that we need to really play within. You'll appreciate, Chair, that you have given us some 20 minutes to make our presentation. The white paper policy, it is 103 pages. So we'll just give you the snippets of what is in that particular policy at a high level. And in terms of the way forward, we'll take the sector into confidence with regard to the next areas that we want to deal with moving forward. Moving to the next slides that provide the vision and the mission for rail policy moving forward. We therefore saying that this national rail policy provides a multi-decade vision of how South African railways must evolve over time. And we are saying this because based on the international benchmarking that we have done, is that various rail reform in various countries did not necessarily follow the kind of the desired future that was put there because of some of the challenges. We therefore saying this is a vision that we have put together to be able to move forward. With regard to our vision, we see rail as an affordable, competitive, integrated, reliable, safe, sustainable transport mode that provides the backbone for South Africa's freight logistics and passenger mobility system to strengthen economic growth and moving forward. And we believe that this is one vision that will assist government in achieving its broader objectives. One, issues of climate change, considering that rail is a cleaner mode of transport, the issue of economic growth and job creation as aligned towards the medium-term strategic framework, and broader economic recovery plan as it was announced by the president moving forward. And we look at a time horizon that we set ourselves as 2050, and in the coming slides, I'll be able to then deal with those particular issues in terms of how do we then move forward. Moving towards the policy interventions in terms of the next slide, the policy is based on two major thrusts. The first thrust being the primary intervention, which is how do we then invest within this rail sector investment, because we therefore recognize that the rail has suffered a major blow in terms of investment if you were to compare it with other modes of transport, which is aviation, road, and rail. Hence, the freight industry have really clawed some of what we call rail-friendly cargo moving forward. And we believe that the intervention of that investment must be able to look at various other market spaces, which is your high speed in terms of the high speed rail, the heavy haul and the heavy intermodal, for us to be able to compete within those particular elements. And obviously consider that rail offers most economically, environmentally friendly and socially viable logistics system. Because when you look at rail itself, we must put the rail transport within the broader logistic chain. And then say, with regard to the transport cost, which constitutes around 60%, and other commodities, how do we then use this rail policy as a pillar to be able to do that? And we believe that the rail sector investment must be aligned to the country's strategic objectives of establishing the local economies, and how do we then build our rail sector in terms of economic growth, and secondly, in terms of the skills, and how do you use this rail policy as a pillar towards industrial policy, and how does it then assist us in really taking a pillar of our manufacturing capacity, and how do we then play within the African, the continent space in terms of dealing with that. Moving to the next slides, which then talks to what then becomes the policy thrust and the policy statements that we put, is that we have recognized that in really looking at the policy, the private investment itself, we have acknowledged beyond the Green Paper's government that there's some sort of institutional reforms that we need to make, which we call the secondary intervention. And it's around really both in freight and passenger. And in freight, one of those key elements that we are introducing is to allow third-party access into our national rail network in conjunction with the investment-led intervention, considering that there is some investment that they'll have to put that. And we have seen that in other jurisdictions, that when you introduce competition and third-party access, it really assists in terms of better service quality, pricing, as well as efficiency and competition and operational efficiency within the industry. And there has been an element of challenges that we are facing in the railway sector itself, with PRASA as the main operator in that space. And we therefore, coupled with their challenges that they are facing, which includes the issues of operational challenges, their financial challenges of theft and vandalism, we believe that it becomes key that we introduce some reform in this element. And we therefore have put a policy statement that we introduce passenger rail concessioning within that particular space. And how do we then, within the key element of the municipalities, deal with the issue of rail devolution, and how do we then implement it in a very staggered approach, not really being a knee-jerk approach in terms of looking at those particular elements. Moving towards the policy statements, I've highlighted some policy statements at a high level, the one being key towards rail infrastructure planning towards the country. And we believe as government that strategic rail network planning and oversight, it is a centralized function that government must undertake, so that, because we have decided we are not creating other new entities, but the key entities that we have as government within both PRASA and Transnet must be able to lead the revitalization, and how do they work together with the private sector to be able to deliver to this mandate. And where we want to focus is really to then say, what then becomes the key corridors to facilitate economic activity and growth within the country. And I think key becomes those elements, goods which are within the general freight business. Key to target is really your palletized freight, which we believe are key towards the contribution of GDP in the country. And secondly, some of those low minerals that we can be able to remove from road to rail. And with our engagement with the models that have been done on freight demand, we have generally really seen what's supposed to be on road and what is that becomes rail-friendly cargo that has been put into trucks. And we believe with determining those particular elements, it will be critical. And there is some contestation and discussion of saying, when you talk about this strategic rail network, how many kilometers are we talking about? We talk about high performance rail network of around 6,000 kilometers, but in our engagement with Transnet and in terms of what they move in terms of commodities, roughly they are able to 80% of their movement happens within 80% of their rail network. And I think a key element is about how do we then guide that moving forward. And we believe that that rail component will be able to collaborate with operating entities who will undertake their own planning in terms of really the key issues around capacity and how do they run those particular elements. And what we see as the high level strategic role of this planning component is to maintain high level strategic vision for rail and publish the National Rail Master Plan and undertake feasibility assessments and studies that informs what will be those investments in terms of the key reforms that we want to engage with. With regard to track gauge, we consider that standard gauge becomes a strategic direction of the future gauge we want to take in the country, because there's no contestation that a wider gauge will give you better benefits in terms of tonnage and playing in different market spaces that we need to be able to deal with that. And the issue is, how do we then make sure that we have a staggered implementation in terms of this standard gauge? And firstly, starting with the current gauge, looking at the capacity that we have, how do we then, within the immediate, look at some improvements that we can be able to deal with, to look at efficiency and be able to deal with that in terms of route by route basis. So that's how we want to implement this particular element. With regard to the branch lines, we believe that they must be categorized as strategic and non-strategic, and that criteria must be able to be defined by government, because we cannot allow state-owned enterprises to continuously just withdraw some of these branches, because we believe some of these are really critical for the development of the rural economies, and over the years they'll be able to deal with that. And we believe that in the development of the National Rail Master Plan, that must be able to be captured very clear. And I think we have learned lessons as government from the branch line concession by TFR that we have tried to take out, and what are those pitfalls. And we believe that this needs to be really be incorporated within access to the broader national rail network on how we need to move forward. Moving to the next slide, which is about the rolling stock. We believe that as government, between ourselves as DOT and DTIC, we need to exploit the manufacturing capacity of rolling stock, and how as the country, with the investment that we have made, we become a big supplier within the continent. And that is in line with our interaction in terms of the African Rail Continental Free Agreement, and how do we then explore that. And we therefore say train operators shall fund and procure and maintain their own rolling stock. And with our engagement with ARIA and the industry, there is an indication of some 45 billion investment in rolling stock to be unlocked. And we believe that the signing of the Luxembourg Protocol will be an enabler in that particular element. And that 45 billion that has been indicated actually excludes some refurbishment in terms of those. And we believe that this initiative will unlock another additional funding requirement. And we therefore see a rail sector where in South Africa we'll have rolling stock leasing companies, the Roscos, and obviously to create extra capacity within the country. And we believe that even train operators themselves that currently exist within the sector, and the Roscos can lease the rolling stock across each other to any other party to be able to encourage new entrants in the rail sector, because we know there's work that has been happened within the food industry in terms of modeling, the timber industry, and how do we then take care of opportunity within this new policy that we are putting moving forward. Looking at the next slide, which is about a policy statement, which is about economic regulation, we will all agree that the National Development Plan, in its analysis of the network industry, have identified rail sector as a monopoly, and we therefore look at how do we then move forward in terms of providing transparency, within the sector. We know there's a transport economic regulatory a bill which is in Parliament, which seeks to deal with this particular element. And in the meantime, like James has said, we therefore established the interim rail economic regulatory capacity to be able to become an interim management to be able to deal with these particular issues. Moving towards rail safety regulation, we are therefore saying the railway safety regulator has been established to play in this particular space, and they've been doing a good job. And we believe moving forward, we must be able to ensure that in the work that they do, they profile the industry and ensure that they become a player to assist the private sector in the third-party access that we wanna deal with. Moving towards security and air management in terms of the next slide, we agree that these have really reached some unprecedented levels, and in terms of theft and vandalism of infrastructure, which affect both freight and passenger, and this really must be classified as economic sabotage, so that the courts are able to do their element. But at a policy level, we therefore believe that we need to have a high sectoral strategy that deal with the security issues and our engagement with police, and how do we ensure that at a critical infrastructure council, we therefore play the role as transport to be able to deal with that. Considering that I'm left with a few minutes, we'll then move to the next slide, which is on the market and organizational structure, which we believe this is one of the critical infrastructure reform that we want to introduce. And we believe that the market will be split at 3 levels, which is your infrastructure owners and the infrastructure managers and the train operators. But key to this is that the infrastructure managers in dealing with that, whether it happens within a vertically integrated entity, then there must be a clear accounting separation, so that when we deal with those particular issues, it's very clear that the investment and how we then charge our access to fees is there's clear transparency with regard to those particular elements. But key to us that is that every open line, whether classified as core, non-core branch line, both freight and commuter lines shall be subjected to third-party access managed by train operator, and obviously that element of transparency. And we believe that the infrastructure managers must periodically publish their network statement in terms of access condition, the capacity element, and the charges with regard to that particular element. The next element, Chair, is about private sector participation, which I think is critical to this meeting, together with the market operational structure, is what the critical element and the role that private sector must be able to assist government in the delivery of the railway services, and that must not be seen as privatization, because it becomes a contracted space, but as partnership of how do we then deal with that. And within the department, will be able to finalize the framework on PSP to be able to demonstrate what are those elements and levels that we need to deal with. The next slide really talks about the key reforms that we have put in the passenger rail, which is introducing of passenger rail concession, and secondly, the issue of the future of urban rail. We believe that there are challenges in that particular regard, but we commit to the development of a devolution strategy for urban rail, obviously working together with the local government and the metros. And we therefore say, as long as we agree with that, with this kind of a way forward, we believe that the next phase of urban rail positioning must be able to be dealt with once we have dealt with, and it will be a very participatory process like we have done with the rail policy. Moving towards my conclusion, Chair, the next slide is really about the timeline for implementation, to then say, here is a big policy which has not been there, very ambitious. What do we see as government? And we have classified our implementation focus within the 3 time horizons, one being the short-term objectives by 2024, secondly, the medium-term objective by 2030, lastly, in line with our vision, which is around 2050. And we therefore try to say, key to our priorities is how do we then develop the National Rail Master Plan, develop a National Rail Act, which will then make sure that we therefore implement some of these critical elements in terms of the development the rail strategy, which is a roadmap that we need to put moving forward. In terms of the medium-term objectives, is how we then conclude a business case for the first standard gauge pilot project, which is obviously probably a combination of both freight and passenger moving forward. And then in terms of the long-term objectives, how do we then look at achieving some of these key elements that we have put forward. With regard to the next steps, Chair, which is the next slide, we therefore saying the white paper on national rail policy will be made public once gazetted in April 2022, which is our time frame. And like I said, the Minister of Transport will officially launch the white paper in the next month in terms of really communicating a message and the policy packages that we are putting forward. And then lastly to say is the intention of the Department of Transport to organize policy advocacy workshop with critical stakeholders. Like I said, I'll only give the snippets of the policy itself in terms of that. We believe where we are as the Department of Transport as government, that the national rail policy gives us a base to be able to direct the sector moving forward. And it is an exciting time and exciting opportunities. We can even term it as a new dawn for the rail sector. And we believe that the new work, the real work starts now in terms of the reforms that we have pronounced on. And that's a new dawn that we see for the railways. And we believe together as government, this will contribute towards government priorities and the economic recovery of the country moving forward. With that said, Chair, this brings me to the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Walker. We really appreciate it. And it's a lot's been said in a short space of time. And it's such great news to hear about the white paper being accepted and it's going to be gazetted. I think many people have been waiting for this for quite some time. And surely lots of debate will result from this. So thank you very much for sharing with us this. And I'm sure people are looking forward to still take up this with you guys and future quite a lot. I've been asked that we take questions at the end of the session. Would you be available at the end of the session a little bit later to answer questions?
Yes, I'll be available.
Thank you so much. So we will talk to you soon. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Right, colleagues, now it's time for us to have the Honorable MEC, Mr. Tau. He's the Economic Development, Environment, Agriculture and Rural Development MEC, and he's going to do the keynote address for us. Thank you very much, Mr. Tau.
Thank you very much to our program director. Let me greet, of course, the leadership of ARIA, members of ARIA, ladies and gentlemen. Well, when I was invited, I was given carte blanche by the organizers to discuss the topic on smart freight transport responsive to the needs of the people. And I thought giving carte blanche in this environment could give one license to say all sorts of things. So I should try and limit my comments to the more recent discussions that we've been having in the department and indeed with the sector. To us, this topic is important, especially after we hosted last month a sector roundtable focusing on transportation and logistics sectors with a specific focus on rail. The focus was on rail infrastructure as an enabler of export-driven growth strategies. We agreed at this roundtable on the following practical interventions that we should collectively pursue. And these include that the Gauteng provincial government will work with the sector, Transnet and other role players and partners to design and deploy a third-party access framework for rail freight moving through Gauteng, using the Gauteng Eastern Cape high-capacity rail corridor. The proposed third-party access framework should be fully roadmapped for engagement with all relevant stakeholders by the end of April this year. As the Gauteng provincial government, we will work with Transnet and other relevant parties to complement the Gauteng Eastern Cape corridor with an investment initiative connecting Gauteng's manufacturing hubs and the wider SADC region via a dedicated freight rail line running north to the Zambian Copper Belt, most likely via Botswana. The Gauteng provincial government, working through the new Transport Authority of Gauteng, will drive a rail infrastructure strategy for Gauteng, using the corridor as the cornerstone of an infrastructure plan to drive measurable freight rail capacity improvements over the next 5 to 10 years. This will also include a coordination platform with PRASA to optimize intersection between freight and people movement on the provincial rail network. President of the Republic has pronounced on the rollout of the Gauteng Eastern Cape high-capacity freight rail corridor to be fully operational by 2025 in partnership with Transnet, the DTIC, the Eastern Cape Provincial Government, and of course, the Gauteng Provincial Government, and this to enable movement of much higher volumes of vehicles in and out of the Tshwane Special Economic Zone, and of heavy manufactured goods in and out of the Gauteng City region manufacturing clusters more broadly. Fortunately, these infrastructure developments echo the institutional focus and objectives of ARIA in other areas like freight transportation as a primary component of all supply chain and logistics systems. After all, freight transportation remains an important aspect of any country's economy as a critical component of supply chains. Hence, freight transport service providers need to carry out their duties responsibly, meticulously, and safely, as these have a direct bearing on the health of a country's economy. It is reassuring, therefore, that ARIA also emphasizes the fact that an overarching objective of all freight-related activities is to create an efficient economy with world-class supply chains competing at a global level. There are also encouraging developments in Africa's busiest airport, OR Tambo, as an important freight hub for the Southern Hemisphere. The Rotropolis in Ekurhuleni municipality will further integrate the Gauteng City region into international trade flows, fostering economic development and job creation in the region. To realize these ambitious goals and plans, the Gauteng Department of Economic Development, we count on the partnership with ARIA to deliver on the GPG freight strategy that has the following pillars. 1, identify freight growth corridors and nodes. 2, decrease the number of heavy freight vehicles in our CBDs. 3, establish freight intermodal facilities on the eastern periphery of Gauteng. 4, align freight intermodal facilities with Transnet container strategy for Gauteng and Durban port developments. 5, provide adequate overload control mechanisms at freight intermodal facilities. 6, provide for adequate levels of safety and security. 7, support move of freight from road to rail. And 8, to reduce environmental impact of freight logistics. We also undertake the following additional measures which we agreed to at the February roundtable. We'll work with the sector to develop a dedicated pipeline of Black industrialist freight sector operators, complemented by a workforce development benchmarking, the install, repair, and maintenance program that we are running in the province. The Gauteng provincial government, as a structural measure to safeguard infrastructure, will work with the sector to deploy community mobilization campaign, incentivizing communities surrounding rail lines to assist with the securing of infrastructure through a direct link to opportunity pathways for local SMMEs and workers maintaining these lines. The community contract engagement model successfully deployed during the build phase of the Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone provides a benchmark on how this could be executed in partnership between ourselves and ARIA and other stakeholders. Thank you very much.
MEC, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. We really appreciate that. Are you going to be online for a while, or shall we take question or two now?
I think we can take questions now because I have a flight to catch.
Thank you, MEC. Thank you very much. Ladies and gents, you can either raise your hands or unmute yourself. Let's allow 2 questions or so to the MEC. So Terry, Gitaira, I see your hand is up. I don't know if the question was for the MEC.
Thank you very much for organizing this very important meeting. I'm very much impressed with the presentation by Wako. It seems South Africa, as the most strong economy in Africa, is actually showing the way for other member states in Africa to follow as far as the railway renaissance development is concerned. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we know that the Cape Town Convention was conceived and born in Cape Town in South Africa. That is an African initiative for which we need to be very proud of. Now, the Cape Town Convention has given rise to aircraft protocol, whereby we have more than 50% of African member states signed and ratifying this convention on aircraft protocol, whereby airplane could be leased, airlines could be run good business without having to pay upfront for the ownership of aircraft equipment. Now, this facility has been very successful, and we see that the airlines in Africa and elsewhere in the world thriving because of the aircraft protocol that was conceived and born in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, following the success of the aircraft protocol, we now have the rail protocol, the Luxembourg rail protocol. You see, again, as an extension of the aircraft protocol. Again, South Africa, being, the big brother in South Africa, we expect the country to show the way. The rail density in Africa is mostly concentrated in Southern Africa, compared to what is compared to the scenario in the other African region. So we would expect again South Africa to lead the way by signing and ratifying the rail protocol, the Luxembourg rail protocol, which is an extension of the aircraft protocol, both of which are actually part of the Cape Town Convention, that was conceived years back. So my question to Wako, and I hope a certain South African lady, Mesera Napo, is also there. We want to hear from you guys where South Africa stands as far as the signing and ratification of the Luxembourg Rail Protocol is concerned. We expect South Africa to lead.
It seems to me we've lost Mr. Gatera there. We will take that question at the end of the session. Thank you for that one. Any other questions specifically for the MEC, please? Ms. Sarah, maybe you can ask your question.
Thank you so much. MEC, thank you very much for making time for the railway sector, the railway industry. And Gauteng as the engine of the economy in South Africa. We truly appreciate the efforts that the Gauteng government has put in place to revive the manufacturing sector. But out of the main manufacturing sector, what are we going to do in terms of transformation, the township economy, working with organizations like ours? Do we plan to have something formalized with the public sector, with the private sector, specifically ARIA, to ensure that we deliver on the mandate that we have promised the people of Gauteng? Thank you.
Thank you, MEC. You can respond.
Well, thank you very much. Firstly, in the broader context of partnership with the private sector, we have established a number of roundtables from which we have identified potential partnerships and programs that we can implement jointly with the private sector. With regards to ARIA in particular, that I participated in our transport and logistics roundtable with a particular focus on rail freight and how we can advance this. We have collectively identified areas of cooperation and collaboration. Firstly, in terms of the development of the strategy and an active lobbying agenda that we have to pursue. Secondly, to identify industrialization opportunities in areas for new industrialists and Black industrialists to play an active role. And thirdly, it's about the location of these enterprises as a contributor towards the township economic development that we have developed at the back of, or rather in response to the legislation that has recently been passed by the provincial. So for us, we see ARIA as a critical role player because at the back of expanding the rail capacity, Gauteng has the opportunity to actively participate in the industrialization of products along the entire value chain, from wagons to other equipment that is required along the value chain. And we think that this creates an opportunity for both government and private sector to work together in the attainment of these objectives and have mutual benefits that can accrue to all parties, with our objective, of course, being the socio-economic development objectives overall.
Thank you so much, MEC. Until I see you're unmuted, do you want to ask a question to the MEC?
Yes, please, Harry.
Thank you.
Good day, MEC. Good day, sir. My name is Fezile from Black South Africa. We would like to get some commitment or something to that effect, MEC, about what government is really doing and urgently about securing the network, rail network, but perhaps beyond securing, but making sure that the vandals that vandalize the network, which is so important for the economy of this country, are taken to book, are brought to book, and something be done to them. I heard somebody else talking about making these vandalism acts to be like treason crimes. They should be, because really, they are crippling the industry and they are affecting the economy very, very badly. Unless they are caught, named and shamed, they will never stop, because to them, this is something that they can do continuously. But we would like to hear government strongly saying that this is going to happen, and it's going to happen effectively in the courts, from the police as they catch them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think, of course, all of us appreciate the reality that vandalization of infrastructure in our country is a huge problem that's impacting our economies and that This has been identified as a significant contributor to the challenges that we have, particularly in freight and logistics, but also other infrastructure that impacts on the economy, including theft of cables, theft of cell phone mast batteries, railway lines, and other infrastructure that is there. This has been identified as an economic crime that requires serious sentencing, and government has developed different protocols to dealing with such an economic crime. What we are saying is that working with ARIA, we should look at how we secure the rail infrastructure through a community-based model, ensuring that, in fact, communities are actively involved through local community-based infrastructure protection mechanisms, particularly in those sites that are most vulnerable. We all appreciate that the police cannot be on every single kilometer of the rail line, but that communities themselves in and around these areas could play a more proactive role in this regard. And we have identified this as the model through which we can contribute actively as the provincial government, working with partners, of course, those including the owners of the assets and industry involving our communities in these processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you
so much. Thank you so much, MEC. We really appreciate your time, and we wish you a blessed day further. Thank you very much for spending time with us, and we look forward to seeing you again in future of ARIA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Right, ladies and gents, we're now going to take a short 5 minutes break, and then we'll take further the program. Maybe let me just show you quickly. So then after the break, we will have Mr. Simon Hugo talking to us about third-party actors liability and insurance. So let's take a quick 5 minutes break. Thank you very much. Hi, ladies and gents, let's take up our seats again. Hopefully, a time to quickly grab a cup of coffee or something. We're going to continue with this exciting program. I'm just going to quickly share my screen with you guys. So there we go. Our next presenter then is Mr. Simon Diogo. He's the Director for Strategic Transfer Solutions. He's going to talk about third-party access, liability, and insurance. Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you, Harry. I'm just going to bring up my screen so I can share the slides with you.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Harry, and thank you, James and Masila, for having me here today. It's an honor to present. Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. Sorry, just give me 1 second.
No problem.
There we go. So this third-party access is an exciting and amazing initiative that will bring about outstanding opportunities for a number of role players. There are a few items that I'd like to discuss around the insurance and liability aspect. First of which is what can go wrong. We've spoken about a lot of items during the course of today, of items not going right. So from an insurance aspect, how do we protect that? What do we know? We know insurance is expensive and it can be complex. We need to make sure that we are adequately covered. And the last point is that advice and partnership is critical. We need to get creative. You as role players need to deal with experts who have specific and current experience in the railway sector. Create tailor-made insurance coverage. So what can go wrong? We've seen and heard about poor rail infrastructure in South Africa. We've got chronic natural elements that can cause catastrophes. This is just an example of such. Loss of life is a reality in the passenger rail space, and we need to ensure our policies and our contracts adequately protect us. The MEC touched on vandalism. This is an example of the Cape Town vandalism of trains in recent time. So what are our risks we need to consider as business owners and role players? Political violence, vandalism, and sabotage. We saw what happened in July in the riots in 2021. This cost the SASRIA approximately 30 billion rand. Not to mention it cost the global insurance markets a lot too. Products liability, what are we selling? What are we providing? And how is that being protected? Guarantees, indemnities, and warranties, with regards to our contracting between the different role players. Environmental impairment and cleanup costs when there is a loss. Are we adequately covered? And carrier's liability and consequential loss. This is huge in the freight carriage space. Business interruption, the financial knock-on and effect as a result of loss or damage. And importantly, potential public relations costs at the time of a loss. So the importance of being adequately insured is point number 2 I'd like to discuss. When things go wrong in the railways, losses can be catastrophic and the consequences can be dire, even for the biggest operators. Railways, like our roads, can be lethal to third parties, and adequate liability cover is extremely important, and even more so now that frequency of rail traffic is going to increase exponentially with third-party access. There are many role players in the life cycle of getting a product to a destination. Contracting and our contracts are vital for adequate protection and insurance indemnity. I'll touch on this a little bit later. Some of the common mistakes and things to look out for in your existing insurance programs: extreme undervaluing of a fleet and or your assets can cause significant financial loss for companies at the time of an incident. The basis of indemnity, a lot of the time, what you see is not what you get. And I think this is a phrase that happens in insurance quite often. South African insurers haven't had a lot of experience in the rail sector, and our policies and policy documents, which a lot of you will see, are extremely long documentation that not a lot of non-insurance individuals will go through. We need to make sure we cater for industry-specific risks and exposures. Inaccurate business interruption sums insured. As I've said before, the financial knock-on of a loss or damage will cause catastrophic loss to your businesses, and inaccurate calculations is not going to be helpful. The big one is liability limits. Is your liability limit enough when it comes to protection? If you are sued or if you are held legally liable in the event of an incident or something going wrong, do you have enough coverage? And is someone making sure that that's being checked? The last point I'd like to touch on is advice and partnership. Advice and partnership is one of the most critical points to your insurance journey. It's vital to get experienced advice from providers who understand the sector, who understand the scale of what's about to happen and the complexities that surround the rail industry. My advice to all role players is to start your business third-party access insurance journey now. Engage with role players who you have trust, who understand your business, who understand what you're about to go through, and help them and let them help you, advise you along the way. Insurance and legal liability contracting need to be at the forefront of your contract negotiations. All of the role players will enter into contract negotiations with providers and partners. Make sure your insurance is tailored to wrap around your insurance contracting so that you can sleep easy. And I think that's the phrase, is that knowing that you're adequately protected and being able to sleep easy as you embark on this exciting journey in third-party access will allow you to grow your business as opposed to worrying about the factors that need to be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Simon. True words there. You're safe. I've traveled quite a lot on social laws on Maryland Sound, so it will definitely also be nice to sleep well on a train and know you're safe. Thank you very much for a good presentation. Hopefully you'll be available for questions and answers just after the next presentation.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gents, the last but not the least is our next presenter, Mr. Tefo Mokaila. He's the Commercial Executive Southern Africa for WAPTEC. He's going to talk about WAPTEC, for original equipment manufacturers' readiness to respond to third-party access. Thank you very much, Tefo.
Thank you, Harry. I hope you can hear me adequately.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I'll share from my side. Harry, thanks very much. And thank you to the meeting participants, the organizers. It's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. So I think the ask was to say, as an OEM, what can you do to assist with readiness so that the private operators will essentially hit the ground running? Now, I think I don't have good news in terms of hitting the ground running. You'll see the main theme here is to say rail technology, rail equipment is a long-term game. You need adequate lead time if you are to get assets that are relevant for your operations, for your network, rather than just taking anything that you can lay your hands on. So my presentation starts with introducing WebTech, and then you'll see later I touch on the diesel electric locos that have proven themselves in the South African market, how you could get the most out of these assets quickly, and summarizing with key considerations. So I see your pace seems to be much slower than mine. I'll move forward nonetheless in the interest of time, and hopefully it will reflect on your side. WebTech, for those who don't know, is a company that essentially expanded and doubled in size in the past 2 years as the merger with GE Transportation got consummated. Essentially an $8 billion company headquartered in the US, and we are operational throughout the world. You will see our presence here in the region and in South Africa in particular when I come to that page. 65% of WebTech is servicing the freight market, which is probably your biggest focus area here. But we do have products, services, and solutions for the passenger market as well, if there are people that are interested in concessioning for passenger rail or tourism market in future. So moving on, I think one of the biggest benefits of dealing with an OEM with a proven track record is you have other customers globally and operators that you can learn from. As a company, we have got about 23,000 locomotives deployed globally that are operational. So you can imagine what that means when it comes to economies of scale, supply chains, and all that. Not to say that there are no challenges when it comes to supply chain and global logistics, but with a global OEM like ourselves, you are able to get support on a global basis rather than relying on essentially a one source kind of support. Other than locomotives themselves, we've got a big service operation, and increasingly the digital space in terms of solutions to make the most out of the assets, utilization efficiencies are becoming key as well, because it's all good and well to get the assets, but they have to be operated properly, the right network, and to derive efficiencies out of that. I've already highlighted that WebTech Corporation, essentially as it is, doubled in size when it merged with GE Transportation. So it's worth emphasizing, because I think the South African audience would have been more familiar with GE as a locomotive supplier. We have now truly moved on. We are WebTech. So in addition, it is the transit business that is running out of Paris that I highlighted earlier from the Fairvalley merger that happened a few years back. So in the South African context, we have fully delivered on any new locomotives that we were busy with in the past few years. But I just want to highlight that despite the fact that we have not been producing any new locos in South Africa the past few years, we still have a strong presence on the ground, because for us as a company, being there for the service environment and to support our customers is quite key. The supply manufacturing of new locomotives is probably the easier part, if I may put it that way. The difficulty, or the most important part, is being there for the 30, 40, 50 years of the operations. We still support today class 34, 35 locos that are beyond what was their initial economic life. And I think that's just the benefit of having an OEM, a technology supplier that's in it for the long haul. The presence on the ground is largely highly skilled technical people that are globally mobile. They support the SSA region, but also plugged into global teams. So you get best practice and speedy reaction whenever there are issues on the ground. So having highlighted who WebTech is and our presence on the ground here in South Africa, I'm going to touch very briefly without going into technical detail for any new rail operators that might be interested on what it means to actually obtain and put locomotives on the track. The two products that have really proven themselves in the South African rail network are our C30 and ES40, or class 43 and 44 as they are called in South Africa. More than 450 of these, plus another.
Therefore, sorry, can I interrupt you there? Can you just cue me? I'm not too sure if I'm in sync with your slide, but I'm showing on the screen. I'm on the right slide. Can you just cue me when I must go to the next slide?
Okay, because I think you bumped me off because I was sharing and then you shared at the same time. So
oh, that what
that's why
happened. My apologies.
Yes, yeah.
So maybe what we must do is, my apologies for this. I will then stop share on my side. If you can then reshare on your side, please.
Thank you. It will be easier that way so that I can
Yes.
move at the right pace. But you are not far off. So I will reshare. You are not far off. And let me know if you can see the screen.
There we go. Thank you.
There we go. So I think we have touched on the company and all that, but I just want to move now to what would be the core considerations for any private operator that wants to engage on supply of locomotives. We have, well-proven products in the South African market. The C30 is, class 43 as well as the ES40, so class 44. There are 450 of these in South Africa, and even more in the region, 100 of the C30s in Angola and some more in Mozambique. And in addition, like I said before, we still support the 40, 50-year-old legacy fleet. So part of your consideration when you look at the type of locos that you need to source would be support that comes with having similar products on the market. Other considerations, which we are not going to go into detail here, but you need to be very careful about the kind of corridor you'll be operating in. There are limitations when it comes to tunnels, bridges, clearances, and all that. But by and large, the locomotives that we have on the ground in South Africa, in the region, have really proven themselves. So I think without going into much more technical detail, I want to move to the next page, which wants to emphasize the point about diesel versus electric when it comes to emissions. I would assume some of your members or operators will be relying on private funding, and you will be aware about the ESG goals and considerations that some of the banks have. Traditionally, you would say diesel is dirty, diesel electric locos are dirty, but we know our issues in South Africa around the electric overhead cables and all that. So functionality becomes more important. But as an OEM for diesel electric locos, we've really taken a few steps, several steps to move our locos towards better fuel efficiency and reduced carbon footprint. So as it is now with the actual diesel locos, you can already do retrofitting with LNG and other natural gases. You guys would have seen in the global press about the battery electric locos that are running in consist. The next step naturally is leading with battery electric locos. And like many industries that are heavy on power consumption, WebTech and others globally are engaged in the hydrogen ecosystem, which hopefully in the fullness of time will result in massive benefits for countries like South Africa, Namibia, to mention just a few, with the long distances and also the access, I guess, to some of the natural resources. Again, the battery electric loco is already in production. I think the key thing to highlight here is in our network with the axle loading limits, it's a balance between the kind of power you can have with stored power on the batteries, and therefore heavier the more batteries you have versus the typical ton per axle load limits that we have. So it's a journey, but I think for some of the private operators that might be looking at yard operations, this might be of interest. I've already highlighted the path towards being greener, so I'm not going to spend too much time here except to emphasize again that this is not a concept. This is in operation in terms of replacement of diesel with gas, but also blending your diesel with more biodiesels, as is being done up to 25% in Brazil by some of our customers. So Harry and the members team, I just want to end with a section around, getting the most out of your assets. I think when it comes to the operations, it's obviously important to get access to the assets, but you soon realize once you've got the assets that between the labor portion, probably rail access fees, you start having fuel as one of the major issues that are a cost driver when you are an operator of diesel electric locos. The other issue that becomes critical is just the network and how the asset, or rather the infrastructure owner, will manage the network. We just had a session now around the insurance, and these accidents are real. So WebTech is very much focused on signaling technology that really is the next level. Asset performance management to ensure that you utilize your assets fully and increase reliability. Network optimization, as well as general transport management solutions. All of these are being used extensively by the Class 1s in the US and Canada, as well as the Australian railroads. To great effect, some of the numbers are there in terms of the fuel savings that you can get. Also network optimization in terms of velocity, because at the end of the day, it should be about doing more with less when it comes to these assets. Rail is a very capital heavy industry, and what you want, in addition to increasing your availability through proper maintenance, is to make sure that you are sweating the assets so that you get maximum economic value out of them. So we are available to take anyone interested through more details, but I think as an industry, ARIA in particular, other items here like signaling are gonna need a consolidated industry approach and push so that the infrastructure owner, TFR, I think that's right by the industry, because to have access to the network and have stop starts due to signaling and other problems that we are aware of will cause massive frustrations to the concessioning or the private rail operations. So there are technological solutions out there available, and I think if there is a need, we could have more closed technical forums to take interested people through the detail. So Harry, I'll end up here with just a takeaway page on how, as a potential rail operator starting up, I think the guys that have been there for longer, your attractions, etc., are far advanced in terms of the key concepts here. And even from our point of view, as a company that has supported and provided rolling stock to such companies, we would not be coming into this blindly. We know the difference between, servicing a customer that is state-sponsored or state-owned versus a nimble small operator. But just as a takeaway, be careful in terms of the kind of assets you get, because there are limitations. So even with the 450 plus locos, plus another 200 odd legacy fleet locos, they cannot necessarily operate seamlessly across the whole network. So you need to be engaging potential OEMs, rolling stock suppliers early on around limitations on tunnels, bridges, and caves, etc. The point I made at the beginning about not having great news when it comes to hitting the ground running for you guys as private rail operators is about lead times. These locomotives are not off the shelf, and part of the problem is that being in our part of the world with the ton per axle limitations as well as Cape gauge versus standard gauge, you cannot easily get this from any other customers or even OEMs that might have excess capacity. It takes even more time and pain to convert. So lead times are critical, and we're talking about 18 months on average. Global supply chains are strained. I think Mike at the beginning of the meeting highlighted this. We see it a lot in terms of electronics and generally, your high technology products. And it's a pain that we are working hard to try resolve. But the reality is lead times are very strained, and expediting comes at a huge cost. I think the last point I'll emphasize is just the economies of scale and the capital intensity. Yeah, I just don't know when finally you're allowed on the networks if there'll be a certain minimum that you need to be, having before you can have access, so that it doesn't become a messy situation in terms of people coming out on the network with onesies and twosies. But we all know the rules of economies of scale. So from our point of view, thanks Eddie for the opportunity, and Marcella and Jane. We have a proven track record. We're available on the ground. I think our technologies are proven, and in terms of commercial integrity and being there to fulfill our commitments and support our customers beyond the initial supply, I think that has been proven with beyond reasonable doubt. So I'm rushing myself because I'm aware of the time, and I myself are constrained. So I'll end here, still available, Harry, to take any calls, but thanks very much for the opportunity and for the time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's clearly good value for money to be involved with Rocktech. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And I'm quite sure people will have some questions for you. So if you can stay where you are, we will really appreciate it. And keep your camera on, because we're going to do some questions now. Ladies and gents, so if the other people still available, and others I'm talking about Mwaku, Simon, Teko, they can also unmute and switch on your cameras, please. We'll really appreciate that. And then we're going to allow some questions. So I pass the other panelists. Yes, thank you, Mwaku. Simon, are you with us? There you go. There you go. Right, here we've got a very strong panel already. I don't know, Marcella, one of you, James, you guys also want to join the panel? You're welcome to switch on cameras, unmute. All right, maybe Nwaku, you might have picked up the question that Zuteri Katera asked earlier on. He referred to the Cape Town Convention and South Africa's position. Did you get that question he asked just now? Maybe you can respond to that.
Yes, thanks very much, Harry. The question the gentleman asked was, what is our position with regard to South Africa signing the protocol? And I think probably when the meeting started, he was not there, because James did actually indicate that we have actually, as the country, signed the Luxembourg Rail Protocol on the 22nd of March 2022. And what we are doing, we have started a process of ratification through the parliamentary processes. So we are really dealing with that matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walker. We appreciate that. Ladies and gents, you're welcome to raise your hand. If you go to reactions at the bottom of your screen, you can raise your hand and I can recognize you should you have a question. Or you can, I don't know, Alistair, you want to ask a question? I see you unmuted.
Yes, please, sir. May I ask two questions? One is to Simon. Will insurance premiums be paid on the basis of per ton carried or on the basis of time? And then for Tefo, would he kindly tell me if an electric locomotive of, let's say, class 22 costs 100 units per kilometer, what does a class 44 cost? More or less in units? Thank you.
Alistair, maybe Tefo, you can start answering the question first.
Look, I'm not gonna answer you here and openly. I'm happy to engage. Firstly, is because obviously of competitive considerations, but I think part of it as well is in the South African network, at least, the operations of your electrics and your diesels have been for completely different reasons. So if you look at the coal line, you run from the mines up to MLO, and then the electrics take that down to Richards Bay Coal Terminal. That automatically makes the utilization of the diesels look poor simply because of the kind of mileage they're doing. I mean, we're talking about, megawatt hours per month that 100 or even less, completely poor utilization if you have to look at that. So part of it is, are you factoring in the utilization into your calculation or not? And of course, that utilization is not for lack of trying, it's because they're exactly for the purpose of hauling short distance so that the electrics can take over for the longer distance. I mean, your electricity price graphs versus your volatile diesel cost would be another consideration. So I don't have a simple answer for you because it's not a simple calculation. But if you were to ask me to help you do a business case, if you were considering the two for whatever operation, we're very happy to help with that. We've got a bunch of engineers, business analysts, and people internally that can crunch numbers. The devil is in the detail in terms of the kind of network that we'll be operating on.
Thank you.
Simon, you want to ask a question? Answer the question?
Yeah, sure. So the insurance premium is based on the tons moved at a multiple of your replacement value. So it's either at your retail value, if they finish product, or it can be done at cost price. So that's the determiner, but the risks associated are taken into account in the rating. So you would have your total volume moved at a rating percentage. The rate percentage takes into account the risks associated, which then obviously gives you your premium.
Thank you, Simon. Let's get Marcella Ntlapo. She's the CEO of ARIA. Those of you who don't know yet, she also wants to ask questions. Thank you, Marcella.
Hi, Henry. Thank you very much. My first questions and comments is to congratulate the Department of Transport, one, for ensuring that we now have a permanent DDG, of which it has been a position that has not been filled for a very long time. And I suppose that some of the developments that we're seeing today is because of having DDG Mwakuma Kaipia as a permanent DDG. So congratulations on that. We as ARIA have seen a new DOT that is engaging its stakeholders, responding to our emails and really seeking the view of the industry. When do we see ourselves as DOT and the only rail association formalizing our relationship and really bringing the rail sector into one and stop working in silos, so that when we develop this policy, when we advise each other, and maybe perhaps at some point forming a rail advisory committee, how soon can we start seeing this relationship being formalized with the association and really moving this country forward? Then, Harry, if you allow me, my second question is for Simon. Simon, insurance, I didn't do well in insurance at school. It has always been a garage purchase, and I think for most people. But for me, it's quite exciting time for third-party access, and you do business in other states within the continent. How is the environment there? And what can we learn from that environment, whether you operate in DRC or any other country on the continent? In assessing a risk, what relationship you would require with the railway safety regulator to mitigate some of the risks that come with third-party access? And in your opinion, do you think that insurance must be a requirement for third-party access and being having as a permit holder? Should that be a requirement? Thank you.
Thanks, Masila. So maybe I'll answer the questions in reverse. Absolutely, insurance should be a requirement from the rail sector regulator. It's vital that all parties involved in this space are adequately covered and are actually insured. So I think that's a very important point to make. The second point you raised is in the African territories, which we do a lot of business across the continent. The space is tricky at the moment. We know that globally, a lot of incidents have given rise to a turmoil in the insurance markets, and that's in a global scale. And a lot of the businesses that we see are reinsured to global reinsurers. It's how insurance works. You've got an insurer locally in your territory, but with the magnitude of risks that you're looking at, that gets reinsured to a global reinsurer or global insurer. So the global market certainly does have an impact. And at the moment, the view on Africa, and that includes South Africa, is not a stable place from a risk perspective. So pricing is expensive, but at the same time, it's a kind of a cost of doing business. You need to have adequate protection. Then the third part is your first question is insurance is actually not something that you study in education. So at school level, insurance is never discussed, and at tertiary education level, insurance is not a course you can take. So you go into a business as a financial director or a risk manager, and your experience with regards to insurance is actually very limited of how the policies work and how they cater for losses. So it is a minefield. You know it with your personal insurance. You get a personal insurance document and it's 40 pages long. I can assure you that most of the people sitting on this call wouldn't have read through that line by line, and two, probably not going to understand the jargon. So it's really important to get sound financial insurance advice. I hope I've kind of touched on your questions.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Marcella and Simon. I see Fazili Dantile. You can unmute to ask a question.
Yes, two questions. Oh,
Mary,
Yes, Marcella.
my other boss has not responded.
Wagu, can you kindly respond?
Thank you, Harry. I see you tried protecting me. Unfortunately, I have to deal with it. I think for us as government, for the fact that we are here in this meeting with the industry, it is a demonstration that we want to work with the rail industry with regard to us really moving forward. And we are continuously happy to engage on moving forward with the industry, because we believe it is an interesting time. And I think some of the skills and experiences that we'll probably have to gather on this vision, it is working closely with the industry. We have previously had engagement, Harry, with ARIA in terms of really formalization of our relationship. And I think it's something that in the short term, we are committing to really working on as government and work with them together. We have seen the membership have grown, which we congratulate them, and we believe with the rail policy being approved, with the Luxembourg protocol being signed and in the process of being ratified, we look forward to a broader, growing rail sector, and we congratulate the ARIA, James and Marcella, to be in the forefront of that particular development, and we commit to work with them as government. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, DDG. Appreciate that. Right, Fazili Dantile.
thank you, Harry. Two quick ones. One to Wako, just to ensure it's a comment more than a question. Just to check if you were there when I was speaking to, I was addressing the MEC around the issue of curbing vandalism on the network. I hope you were there, and just to ensure that your office and the MEC, as he promised that something is being done. You said that as well, that real action be seen to be done. Otherwise, the industry is going to be damaged, if it's not already, by these vandals, because even the clients that we work with, like Transit and PASA, will be discouraged to put up any work, because they will say, what is the use of doing that? Because this will be vandalized, and by so doing, killing us as industry players. So it is important that really something is seen to be done on the legal side to ensure that people are scared to do these things because they know that there are consequences to them if they do. Secondly, to ARIA leadership, thank you for this very, very informative and useful session. And can I just check if we can get the papers today? Are they available for us to get? Because they are quite good papers that we'd like to have and read at our own time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fazile. Then one of the panel will want to respond to Fazile. No comments from my side. All right. Ladies and gents, yeah, thank you for the questions thus far. I see there are questions in the chat room, but we're running a little bit short of time, so we'll get our panelists to answer you offline. What we like to do now, before we give our chairman opportunity to close the session for us, you can ask the panelists here for some closing remarks. We can start with Tefu, then we go to Mbago, then we go to Simon, maybe then Marcella want to say a few closing remarks, and then we'll hand over to our chairperson to close the session for us. Thank you very much. Tefu, your closing remarks, please.
Thanks, Harry, and thanks, James and Marcella, for the opportunity. I think it was informative. We learned as much as anyone else, and some of the questions as well as the factors that were put forward will be factored into our considerations as an OEM regarding how we approach and motivate as a local branch of a global OEM for long-term investments in the South African market, because as much as there's been serious turmoil in terms of the state-owned enterprises, at least, once these private rail operations come through, it will allow a long-term game for all of us, so that whether we're building locomotives or doing modernizations is not stop-start. There's continuity from various operators so that the industry can be sustainable, because I think sustainability is going to be key, and I can't emphasize enough, this is a very capital-heavy industry, so sustainability becomes key rather than splits where there's a period of excitement and then 7 years of famine. So I thank you for the opportunity. We are available for any further questions. I saw some of the questions. We'll take them offline with the respective people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan. Much appreciated. Didi Jing, welcome.
Thanks very much, Harry, and our appreciations, and thanks to ARIA to invite us to share this platform, and to Misela specifically for the congratulations. It must not sound like I'm new to the railways. I've been around. It's just a promotion. I've been in the sector for almost 18 years now, and we look forward to continuous engagement with the sector. And I think it gives us pleasure, colleagues on the call, that as a government, we are playing our role of providing an enabling policy framework for the sector to be able to thrive and do its work. And with regard to the policy, we know, like I said, the work is starting. We are currently engaging with Transnet as the policy department in terms of their process of slot allocation, how do we then implement this third-party access together with PRASA on the concession side. And we will ensure that as part of that process, we take the industry along and ensure that there's proper consultation, that we don't have a policy that is then developed and it then becomes a white elephant in terms of getting dust in our offices. And lastly, on the issue of security, like Fezile has commented, in line with what the MEC has said, government is really taking this serious. And from the transport department, as a sector, we are looking at how do we then have an overall strategy that deals with this issue at a sectoral level. But there's various work happening in this space. Government has taken this issue very serious, and we are continuously reporting within the government security cluster on these matters in terms of how do we ensure that we deal with these issues and they are classified as economic sabotage. And I can tell you that both PRASA and Transnet, they are hard at work in terms of coordination effort. And with colleagues on the call, we have colleagues from DTI. There's work and research that is being done with the DTIC, just to look at the justification of this trade of scrap metals and what are the policy pronouncements that we can make in that regard. So there is a broader government approach in that. And as the Department of Transport, working closely with PRASA, Transnet, and Gautrain, we are participating in that process. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and welcome. Simon, closing words from your side.
Thank you. Thanks to ARIA and the team for the platform today. We certainly are looking forward to this exciting chapter in our country. I think it's an amazing initiative that we've been successful on. Some of the parting words that I'd like to leave you with and urge you to do is don't let insurance be a grudge purchase in your business. Knowledge is power, and knowledge comes from professional advice. Get the advice, understand what you're purchasing, and understand how it can add value in your business. Because if utilized correctly, insurance can be an extremely valuable tool in your business. So thanks very much to everyone.
Thank you, James. Really appreciate that. Ms. Sarah.
It was supposed to be James coming up, but before James closes, I'm quite passionate about the rail industry. And the last words on my side, I'd like to read out to the railway community is that I am a railroader. I am an integral part and essential part of the great machine that is transportation. It's because of me and my fellow railroad men and women, the people of this country can work side by side with Transnet to ensure that transport remains the backbone of the economy. Thank you. And I hand over to my other boss.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sarah. Yes, let's hand over to the chairperson, Mr. James Holly, to do the closing of the event for us. Thank you very much, James.
Harry, thank you very much, and thank you to you firstly for hosting us today, and then thank you to the panelists and everybody that's spoken today. A couple of highlights that I picked up from what we've heard today is Mike Chrysalis confirmed for us that there's a huge freight body that is available for movement on rail under the third-party access program. And that, of course, is the most important thing. It always starts with the freight. To the DDG, you mentioned a new door. And that's certainly how we see it. It's really encouraging that you, as our government, see the same. You also said that the real hard work starts now. And then that you want to make sure that rail policy doesn't become a white elephant and doesn't gather dust. That's really encouraging. All of that is really encouraging. And thank you for the progress that you've made participating today. And we certainly in ARIA look forward to engaging actively with you into the future. The MEC Parks Tower said, spoke about the high capacity freight network to the Eastern Cape, with third-party access as the backbone to that. It's so encouraging to hear that at local government level as well, they are factoring third-party access into their policy and thinking, and really encouraging that it's advanced beyond a policy at national government and something that's getting into local government. The MEC also said that he sees ARIA as an important partner, which was really encouraging too. To Simon, it's great to see that there are insurers in South Africa that do understand the rail sector. And again, I'd like to engage, encourage our industry to engage on that. The issue of risk allocation and risk mitigation in the access agreements that are going to be concluded with the infrastructure owner, which is of course Transnet, is going to be a critical part of the implementation of reform. And insurance really sits at the heart of that risk mitigation and the ability for operators to take risk. So it's really a vital part of the success of rail structural reform. To Tefo from GE, I think what you showed us is that technology is going to be absolutely critical to the future of how trains are run in South Africa. Technology has come so far in such a short period of time, and it's really exciting to see where it's going. That's technology both in terms of telemetry, it's technology in terms of positive train control and signaling, and maintenance systems, etc. One of the big issues we're going to have is, of course, the lack of skills in what should be a rapid growth period. Our ability to rely on train monitoring systems and telemetry is going to be a vital part of the success of this too. And relying on OEMs that are monitoring tens of thousands of locomotives worldwide is going to be a critical part of the success and practical implementation of this. So that's also really encouraging to see. And I sort of encourage everybody, of course, to really think about that. The one important thing you did say, and it's important for everybody to understand this, is that the lead times associated with locomotive procurement is 18 to 24 months. So from the time that access agreements are concluded by operators, it is going to be 18 to 24 months before the first train sets really start up in South Africa. There are some locomotives and wagons, of course, in the private sector, which will be introduced. But we're only going to see this rolling out in scale in 2 years' time. And it just shows the importance of accelerating now so that we can realize the economic benefits to South Africa. Every month we lose now it means that it's not 24 months, it's going to be 25 months. And it shows the importance of us concluding and implementing the access agreements now. We desperately need this capacity in our economy in order to unlock the upstream growth and create the jobs. It really points to the fact that it has to be, we need to accelerate and focus on getting it done now. The last closing comment I'd like to make is I'd like to send out a very broad invitation to all of those who have felt the need to participate today, to join ARIA as members. It's important that we have all stakeholders forming part of the conversation at this critical time and juncture in our rail story in South Africa. So please make contacts, please reach out, and please join us in this critical time. So thank you once again to everybody that's participated. It's been an incredible period in the rail industry, and we are looking forward to working side by side with industry and government as we walk this important next period of implementation.
Thank you so much, everybody. Look forward to seeing you again at the next great ARIA event. Thank you so much for all your support.